Chapter 7. Condemned. At the time I had forgotten my name as well as my inherited capability. I had fallen to the land below, but soon I had been reminded of my responsibility. Envant Bodes, 16th couplet in Sons and Daughters, page 302. Sandu woke, his eyes adjusting to the bag over his face. The bag was old and wicker with frayed threads. It was itchy. He took a breath in, and his nose smelled like the dust of the old bag. He had no idea where he was or where the cloth-covered object was. Footsteps sounded in front of him. The bag was pulled off his face, and Sandu recoiled, his eyes having trouble adjusting. A pair of Light's Heirs stood guard by a door directly opposite him. The captain to Light's Heirs stood in front of him, eyes intently and almost passionately fixated on Sandu. This had to all be some mistake. If Daravis needed him alive to complete his charge, why sentence him to be hanged in some random city? "So, here's my problem," he started. "We're charged with protecting the Awakened. Now, it is impossible that the assassin was just that good, but I don't know. I think it's a little strange that as soon as you show up, the assassin does, and as soon as you know where the safe house is, the assassin now knows where to shoot him. You wouldn't know anything about that. Now, would you?" I'm not quite sure. I didn't kill him, I promise," Sandu said. "Oh, I'm sure. We've already interviewed my brother, the one who escorted you to the safe house, and he does corroborate your story. So my question is, where did you learn how to bind a simulacrum on a Light's Heir?" he questioned. Sandu chuckled nervously. "I'm not sure what we're talking about. This has to be a misunderstanding. I did not kill him." The captain remained still for a second. All right. What about this?" He pulled out a small pyramid with intricate characters on it. "What's this?" Sandu remained silent. "You were carrying it covered in cloth. A means of communication with the assassin? Maybe something you stole from the Quasar Sacrarium?" "Daravis handed me that, although I didn't know what was wrapped in the cloth." "Good. Why were you in his Quasar Sacrarium? Only the Awakened can be granted access to it." "He opened it for me. When I first came here, I asked him what I should do to make his experience more pleasurable. That's when he led me down there. That's also when he gave me whatever that thing is." He paused. I don't know what's going on." "An interesting story. Do you know why he would lead you down to the Quasar Sacrarium?" "No clue," Sandu said simply. The captain looked back, as if straining to hear something. "It seems like you aren't lying. That's mildly inconvenient. All is well, I suppose. You didn't have anything to do with the assassination." Sandu breathed out in relief. "Right. He'll be publicly executed tomorrow morning." Sandu blanched. "But you said I was innocent. Please, I've only ever been a servant to the Imperium." "I did, and you are. But since you know what an Awakened even is, or who we are for that matter, you will have to be put to death. Could you imagine if everyone knew that such beings existed? Mass chaos. In any case, somewhere to be. Anyways, Daravis knew this, and for reasons unknown, the Awakened wanted you to be hung at Minu. Since one of our chapter agreed, we must honor that promise. The Imperium thanks you for your faithful devotion." "I'll tell everyone I can who you are then," Sandu said, hoping to find any version of this conversation where he didn't get sentenced to death. "Oh, I'm sure you will. That's why a fusion formula will be placed on you, to keep you from leaking any important bits of information. And after we do that, all we have left is to turn you over to the nearest executioner's office and let them handle it from there." "Wait, but..." The captain delivered a light jab to Sandu's face. Sandu was promptly knocked unconscious. Sandu awoke in a cell and immediately clutched his head. It felt like it was on fire, with a deep pain that ran from his neck to his skull, a throbbing behind the eyes which made it hard to focus. He looked around and tried to stand, but something jerked his wrists down. Chains. Wonderful. Just wonderful, he thought. Someone coughed to his left. Sandu turned to look at them. They looked to be sleeping at the moment, but they looked worse for wear. A prisoner. And now Sandu was one too. A guard strutted into view. Alrighty, my dear heretics, today's the special day, the big day. And what day is that again? Sandu asked, rubbing his face. Your execution day, of course. Sandu's stomach felt icy. Blood pumped in his ears. His eyes went wide. Don't worry, the gallows aren't too far. You don't even have to wait. You'll be wheeled out any moment now. Sandu trembled, but felt his tongue grow stiff when he tried to tell the guard about how he got there, how this whole thing was a mistake. Perhaps it was just a bad dream. Soon more guards had arrived and helped him load the other prisoner into a wagon which toted a cage. The guards didn't seem to be very concerned about how rough they were being when they shoved the two of them into the cast-iron cage. They walked away as the door clanged shut and the lock clicked close. The other prisoner seemed to wake up. She was a woman, roughly the same age as Sandu, but just a little shorter. Sandu couldn't help but feel as if he had seen her before, but his head swam with confusion and pain. So what did you do? He mumbled. If he was going to die, he might as well strike up a conversation. She said nothing, but rather opened her mouth and pointed at her tongue. What looked to be a hollow triangle sat in the middle of her tongue. She wasn't a criminal. Sandu stared. She was on the same serving staff that he was. She had tended to Deravis's food and drink. She had been nice to him. He'd been allowed to meet the staff the night before he met Deravis. Saints, everyone on his staff was going to be killed. Sandu was going to be killed. The wagon went over a large rock and Sandu hit his head on the bars. They didn't talk. They already knew each other and what waited for them. What else was there to discuss? The wagon went around town, alerting people to the fact that there was to be a hanging soon. Some people averted their eyes, while others stared blankly at them. It seemed people didn't know how to act towards those destined to be dead within the hour. The societal higher-ups looked at them contentedly, never breaking eye contact, while the poorer would look anywhere but the cart. It seemed to Sandu that they knew they were only ever a breath from the same fate, while the elites could pull strings and get charges dropped. Was this really the Imperium Sandu had served? The wagon rattled over a couple rocks, and Sandu realized that they were there. It was out of the way, fringing on the outside of the city. The gallows stood proud with a high platform raised 4 or 5 feet from the barren ground. A tall post was fixed horizontally, capable of hanging multiple people at the same time. He counted 5 ropes. Such a device confused him. Do they hang multiple people often? He thought to himself. The Imperium couldn't be this bad. Sandu had lived in it his entire life. Was this really how they did things? The horses stopped and the driver dropped to the ground, dust and dirt flying about as he did so. He walked to the back and undid the latch, handing each of them off to another soldier. Sandu looked outward and was surprised. A group of at least 50 people stood, just watching. Sandu and the other woman were pushed up the stairs to the main platforms of the gallows, and the thick robes were wreathed around their necks. Here we are gathered to see the execution of 2 vile heretics by the use of hanging. The crowd cheered, fists raised in the air, and the angry voices calling for the hanging to begin. Sandu felt his stomach turn. Why are they so eager, he thought. These 2 are found to be guilty and are to be put to death. Does anyone contend this? These 2 are found to be guilty and are to be put to death. Does anyone contend this claim? No one shifted position unless it was to get a closer look. Without further ado, we shall hang the sinful wretches. The witch first. To Sandu's right, the floor dropped out beneath the woman, and the rope cinched itself tight around her small neck. She struggled for a while, but eventually her small outcries reached a decrescendo, and her body became still. The wind picked up a little, flapping Sandu's clothes. The crowd looked eagerly at him, almost like an animal in a frenzy. Well done, well done! The warlock next! The floor slipped out from under Sandu's feet. The rope hugged his throat tightly, the fibers biting into his skin. Someone caused a disturbance in the crowd. Sandu reflexively kicked his feet, even though he knew they would find no purchase. He tried to think of ways to escape, but his hands were tied. Literally. A collective gasp broke out from the crowd, and from what Sandu could gather, someone was running to the gallows. Someone shunting people out of the way, throwing them to the ground, and dodged around others. Sandu tried to pry the hungry rope from his throat. The soldiers looked concerned, one letting his hand go to the hilt of his sword. They burst from the thralling crowd, then proceeded to sprint toward Sandu. The soldiers ran to intercept him, but they playfully evaded them. One soldier fully unsheathed his sword and moved to strike. They ducked under it and stabbed him in the abdomen with a large knife. The stranger wasted no time and continued on their way, even as the soldier doubled over, a hand over his stomach. Sandu was sure he was hallucinating, an onset of the lack of oxygen his brain was getting. Another guard fell off the platform behind him, and although Sandu couldn't see them, he could hear their footsteps thump against the wooden platform. He heard the air above his head silently whisper as the knife slit him from the rope. Sandu fell some 4 feet, but still tried to pry the noose off his neck. Blurred edges crept into his vision, and he instinctively breathed in but couldn't. The world seemed to press upon him. A small part of his brain hoped that if the rope above him had been cut, the cinch knot would release. But no, Sandu could still see the fibers of the rope bite into the skin of his could still feel the fibers of the rope bite into the skin of his throat. He clawed at the terrible knot with dull, slow-moving fingers. His vision was tight. The crowd started to disperse, screams tearing wildly into them. The stranger dropped down, large knife in hand. As Sandu landed, they leaped atop Sandu. He frantically looked from the knife to the woman's face. She had wide eyes, ones that shone crazily. She had a small nose and small lips, and black hair teased his cheeks as she leaned over him. She pushed his head to the ground, trying to keep him still as she cut into the still constricting noose. He felt his eyes begin to roll, and the woman started to cut more fervently. Her wide eyes worried as her eyebrows turned up in concern. Her expression struck Sandu as beautiful. The rope parted from his skin, but it was already too late. Sandu blacked out, but he could swear he heard the woman say something as he slipped away from consciousness. Chapter 8. Lovely. Some say that the heart can think separate from the mind. Whatever this is, that it is. Some say that the heart can think separate from the mind. Whether this is that it is, or it is that the heart is simply the housing for the soul, the two combined? Envant Bodes, 300th couplet in Musings, page 293. Sandu's eyes fluttered open, and he immediately gasped for air. His chains clinked against one another. Where was he? Sandu forced himself to breathe slower. He wasn't being hanged. He wasn't dying. He was not dying. But where was he? His chest ballooned out as he took quick, sharp inhalations of air. He looked down. His hands were chained to a stone pillar behind his back. The rest of the room had little light. Barren as it was, the room had a single chair in the corner. A basement, and an abandoned one at that, too. Nice. He pulled at his chains, but they didn't give. His wrists smarted, and it felt like a line of fire had been drawn around his neck, no doubt bruised and ugly color. He breathed deeply. Air seemed like such a luxury. It held a richness in it that he hadn't noticed before. He breathed in again, in and out. In and out. In and out. He could hear footsteps descending down the stairs. The woman from before came into view, an excited glint in her eyes. She wasn't wearing the cloak, but rather a tan shirt with wide sleeves ending just above the elbow. It showed her slightly tanned skin, the fabric ending just before her She wasn't wearing the cloak, but rather a tan shirt with wide sleeves ending just above the elbow. It showed her slightly tanned skin, the fabric ending just before her shoulders, leaving her collarbone and a modest view of the chest in view. Below that, a burgundy skirt fitted to her waist. "Oh, hello, darling. It's so good to see you conscious, not to mention alive. I mean, I'd still have you even if you were dead, so don't worry. And sorry about the chains. I couldn't take the chance that you would run off on me," she said emphatically, eyes never leaving him. He took a steadying breath. "I don't know. I think I'm getting used to being tied up." "Oh, I just love that sarcastic wit you have, my love." She seemed to be lost while looking at his eyes, entranced, infatuated, obsessed. "So, can I, not be chained up?" he asked. If she had rescued him, then she obviously didn't want him dead. It couldn't hurt to ask. "Well, of course." "Wait. No, you just try to escape. I mean, maybe I overdid it with the literal chains, but I couldn't risk it," she said in a heightened tone. "I've waited so long, and now I have you. I finally have you. Of course, I got a little stressed when you disappeared for a little, but it's all good because you showed up in my town. Never has fate been so indulgent." Sandhu felt fear start to rise within his stomach, a silent fire.
Following them.
The woman suddenly lunged at him, hands outstretched. Sandhu reflexively tried to pull away, but the chains kept him in place. They dug into his wrists more. The woman clasped her hands around Sandhu's face, her eyes only an inch from his own. Sandhu tried to pull away, but the woman's grip was firm as she held his face in place. "Oh, thank you so much, darling. I don't think I've ever seen you scared like this before. It makes you look so attractive. I just love the way this expression looks on you. I wonder how I can get more of that. I mean, I'll always fixate on your face because that's just how cute you are, but I do want more of this expression. Makes me feel so excited." Her fingers started to dig into his skin. He winced. She retracted her hands, letting go of her face. Sandhu stared at her and she stepped back. She gasped. "I'm being honest, I promise. I've dreamed of you, Sandhu, so why would I lie to the man of my dreams?" He dropped the look and let his head hang loose as he stared at the ground. He just wished for a day of normalcy, just one day. Ever since he had been transferred to serve Daravis, his life had gone exponentially downhill. The woman bristled. "Fine. I'll prove it to you. Your full name is Marius Sandhu Mahey. You're 23 years old, unmarried, and without children or a significant other. Well, until now. You are a valuable high official servant to the elites of the Imperium, and you prefer sweet over savory most days of the week. Oh, and speaking of food, your favorite dish is smoked cod with ginger ale, brown sugar, garlic powder, and a side of lemon rice. I mean, sometimes you add some spice. I mean, how else could I know you so well besides the fact that I'm your one true love and that you are mine?" "How do you know all this? I've never even seen you before. Do I know you from somewhere?" "This doesn't make any sense," he said, the tone in his voice growing agitated. "First the assassin, then the hanging, then this." "Oh, I like that little bite you just put into your words. I love it. But yes, I guess I've been following you for some time now, just watching over you like your little guardian angel. You just haven't known. You weren't supposed to. So now you've been stalking me. Some guardian angel having me chained up in a random basement," he retorted. "Sorry, can you please remind me who in the heavens just saved your butt from being hanged?" "You better start behaving well for me," she all but screamed. "Oh, sorry. Sorry, can you please remind me who in the heavens just saved your butt from being hanged? You better start behaving well for me," she all but screamed. Sandhu was silent. He was currently prone, not in much of a position to fight, and she had saved him from otherwise certain death at the gallows. Was this the reason Daravis specified meanness? Did he foresee Sandhu being saved? If that was true, that meant that Sandhu was still to serve out his promises to him, but that didn't mean... The woman started laughing, a rich tone to it, but her breathing seemed to grow a little ragged, and her timbre began to become shrill. She was hysterical, her body racked by the violent outbursts. She stopped. Suddenly, her eyes locked on Sandhu. he started squirming, trying to find an angle in which he could get out of his restraints, even if it was only for a foot of leeway. Something was very, very wrong. She came closer to him, her lips only a couple inches away from his ear. "You know, it's all right," she whispered. "Everything is all right, darling. You're here with me and I'm here with you, but it seems that you have a minor misconception of me. I really do love you, and I know just the way to prove it. Don't go anywhere now. I'll be back in a second." Her voice chilled his blood, an unsettling feeling. "Hi, Jessa. I can see you in the car." Her voice chilled his blood. An unsettling feeling grew behind his spine, as if a large predatory creature were ready to pounce. She kissed his ear and pulled back. Her form disappeared back up the stairs. Sandhu leaned against his restraint, suddenly tired. It felt like days since he had eaten last. Now that he thought about it, he had no reference for time or location. He had only been conscious for brief episodes before he either passed out or was knocked unconscious. His mouth felt dry and his body was covered with scrapes and bruises. He tried at the chains once more. The woman came down the stairs, a large knife in her small hand. She approached him and sat down so the two were eye level with each other. She held the knife before him, showing him the razor-sharp edge that it held. "That's quite the knife you got there. What's it for?" he asked. "Oh, good question. And yes, it is kind of large, but you'll see." She balanced the knife on the tip of her finger. "You know what my favorite color is, my dear?" No, don't answer. "Do you know what the color of love is?" "Red. I mean, we see it on the holidays and the festivities and all that, but they have it wrong. It's not just red. It's dark red. Not some frilly, silly red that always pops up. No, it's more like the color of blood." She let the knife fall from her finger and caught it with her other hand. She set the knife down by her side and held up the finger she had been balancing the knife on. A drop of blood blossomed from her skin. "Now, my dear, that's the color of love." She presented her finger to him. "My favorite color. But since you still seem to question my sincerity, which isn't bad, I've always loved how critical thinking you are, how questioning. But to clear that up, I'm going to have to show you just how much I love you." She flung the knife into the air and caught it. Then she lowered it to her forearm and drew a line downward. She placed the knife by her side once more and proffered him a closer look of her arm. Sandhu began to think that she hadn't actually done any damage, but ever so slightly a red line started to emerge. Blood. "You see now, my love? Now, why would I do that? Well, it does look sort of pretty. That's not why. I did it because I would kill for your love. You should see some of the people in that crowd that were just watching as you were dying. Oh, I did have a fun time with them, but that's besides the point. What would you like for dinner?" "Let me guess. Smoked cod. Ever since I realized that was your favorite, I've been practicing on how to make it the best. How does that sound?" she asked him, intently doting on his answer. Good glory, she was genuine. "That sounds great," he mumbled. Had that really happened? Even if this woman was authentic, Sandhu still had trouble processing it. He had realized he hoped that all of this had been a lie. This would be much easier to stomach if it had all been a ruse, an act. "Fantastic! I'll be down in just a minute with that. Oh, and some water. You must be terribly thirsty." She jumped up and began to walk up the stairs, the knife held loosely in her right hand. She stopped. "Oh my, I'm completely stupid. Stupid. She turned toward him. "My name's Vanderay." And with that, she proceeded up the stairs and began to cook him dinner. Sandhu had begun to ponder on how he had managed to avoid all manner of restraints and being tied ups. So far, he was currently on a streak. He'd been tied to a chair when the Lightsailers had interrogated him next to the prison, and now, which made 3 in over the span of a week, as Sandu could gather. By now, his wrists were raw, and now that the immediate adrenaline had worn off, every time he made contact with the cold chains, it felt like his skin was burning. He had woken multiple times in the night. Every little sound and sensation jolted him from his sleepful stupor. His mind felt overused, and even after he had been fed, so did his body. It felt like he was beginning to fray, his mind unable to take in all the recent trauma and pressure. But something was there, buried deep in his brain. It was Daravis. Despite the meager time he had spent with the eccentric man, he felt energized. He couldn't help but remember that he had made him a promise. He had to get that pyramid-looking thing to where he could see that constellation. What was it called again? He thought. The Trapper? Better question. Why had Daravis specified he be sent here? Why Minu? Vanderay walked downstairs, but jumped the last few steps as she came into the basement. She immediately looked at Sandu. Good morning, my love. Glad to see you didn't sneak away. Such an early riser. Well, it was hard to get up. I was really comfortable down here. Had the hardest time keeping my eyes open, he said. Vanderay clicked her tongue and sat by him, her head on his shoulder. My thinking, we should celebrate today, it being the first official day that we're together. Have any ideas? Well, and I'm just putting this out there, I could not be chained up. She edged closer to him. He could feel her breathing, her breath, her diaphragm deflating and expanding. Yes, but we already went over this, dear. If I did that, then you could escape, and well, that would really upset me. But I have read that a healthy relationship requires trust. Maybe. Sandu tried to shift into a better position to support himself as Vanderay leaned on him. He winced as his bare skin rubbed against the metal of his chains. Vanderay shot up, her eyes desperately searching him. Oh my goodness, did I hurt you? Oh my stupid. How could I ever forgive myself? How can you ever forgive me? Please forgive me, my darling. It wasn't you. She stilled, an inquisitive look on her face. Well, then why did you gasp like that? It sounded like you were in pain. I know what that sounds like. My wrists are still raw from the rope I was tied in. Then you put me in chains. Well, they rubbed the same places, he responded. She was oblivious to the hidden insult and began to look over his restraints. Her form stooped over him. She carefully moved the shackles and took a sharp inhale. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that your skin was this tender. I'm just the worst. I can't have you in pain. You're my little perfection, the most valuable thing in this world. We've got to get these off you. But then, you just run away? Actually, I have this plant in my garden. My mom, well, she said it could help people sleep. Okay, I have a plan. I'm going to feed some to you, and then I'll take them off. How does that sound? He remained silent for a few seconds. Vanderay tilted her head at him. I think healthy relationships need trust. I promise that I won't run. Over the last few days, you've been the best host. I wouldn't have anybody else hold me against my will. Aw, do you really mean that? That is just the sweetest thing anyone has ever said to me. I mean, people have cussed me out and chased me, so there's really no contest. And a healthy relationship does need trust, but you gotta promise you're not lying to me, and you can't run away from me. I, Sandu, promise, he said slowly. All right, just give me a minute, she said. She distanced herself from him, pounded her hands into her solar plexus. She began to slightly convulse and retch. Coughing sounds resounded in the empty basement, and with one last shake of her body, she reached her hand inside her mouth and pulled out a key. Sandu wasn't quite sure what he just witnessed. Vanderay covered the palm of her hand with her sleeve and rubbed the key with it. Saliva and things that Sandu would rather not speculate fell onto the ground. She looked at him, a smile on her face. What? If it was anywhere else, someone could steal you away. Can't have that now, can we? I'm just going to reach behind you, and the lock clicked open, and his restraints collided with the ground. He pulled his hands in front of him and looked at his wrists. They were a pinkish color with a smaller, more rough band of red. His skin was torn and vulnerable, although he did see some scabbing in some areas. Vandere sat close to him, clutching his right arm. She stood up and tugged on his arm, motioning with her head toward the stairs. He got his feet under him and let Vandere pull him up. She toted him up the stairs, and the two of them climbed, Sandhu heavily relying on her balance. He was still a little weak, his body unaccustomed to standing, his legs being used. They arrived on what Sandhu assumed to be the ground floor. Vandere walked him into a small hallway and farther into a room. Okay, honey, this is my room. That's my bed, and there is my closet, and I'm going to grab something from my nightstand, and I swear, if you try anything funny, you're going to wish you were chained to that You're going to wish you were still chained to that pillar, okay? Sandhu nodded in affirmative, but his eyes widened as his face went slack. What in bonds motives? He whispered under his breath. It was him. They were glued to the walls of the room. It was all him. All of it was him. Every conceivable place on her walls was adorned with sketches and drawings of himself, all from different angles and with a different environment. She must have been following him for some time to have such an eclectic collection. As he looked around, he could see what were most likely her first few attempts. The pages had thick lines, and the face shape changed and varied with each one. There were hundreds. This chick is really insane, he thought to himself. Sandhu wondered how she had seen him to complete the drawings. He was a valuable servant, one that often changed hands, all done with very little public attention. How had Vandere even known about him if she lived here in Minu? Vandere closed a drawer, obscured by the doors to the closet, and came to him with a bottle of clear, thick liquid and a roll of bandages. She sat down on her bed and patted the spot next to her. Sandhu joined her and held out his hands as she had instructed. Vandere popped the cork off the bottle and smeared some on her right hand, then placed the bottle off to her side and placed her left hand under Sandhu's. She lightly layered it on his wrist, very carefully rubbing it in when she moved to a particularly bad part. She motioned for his other hand, and Sandhu obliged. She took the roll and wrapped his wrists, tearing it from the roll as she finished. She wound it comfortably tight. It's some tangle brush extract, a natural antiseptic that comes from the leaves when you squeeze them. It can also reduce swelling. To some degree, though you might not notice that. I have a garden outside in case I ever need more. Extraordinary what plants can do. All right, does that feel better? He rubbed them. Yes, Vandere, it feels much better now. He turned to her and noticed that pink had started to frame her wide eyes. Her eyes grew moist, and some tears spilled out. What? You said my name? She mumbled. You actually said my name. She hugged him suddenly and with force. Sandhu didn't know how to react, but placed his hands on her back anyway. She wrapped her arms around him tightly, savoring how his body felt, how warm he was. They sat there in the embrace, but Sandhu felt something on his lower back. It was warm, and after it had seeped through his clothing and rolled down his lower back, a liquid, Sandhu extricated himself from a mournful-looking Vandere and placed his hand on her left arm. He pulled it in front of him. The events of last night flashed briefly in his mind. Her arm. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I get any on you? No, it's really fine. Wait, what are you? Sandhu reached behind her and grabbed the bottle, placing some on his hand as he began to rub it over the area she had cut herself last night. He placed the bottle on the wooden floor and then wrapped it, making sure it was tight so as not to have the cut open up again. I don't think I ever thanked you, for saving my life, he confessed. You hardly have to thank me, darling. But I like the sentiment, she said in response. She looked at him. Hey, listen, I need to go run some errands, but that means you'll be alone, without me. How do I make sure you won't escape? Got it. Stay here. I'll go get that plant. Stay here or I swear I get creative, my darling. My sweet, so don't make me do something we'd both regret. She rushed out of the room and Sandu was left alone. From what he had seen, the building seemed to be worse for wear. The wooden floor had been scuffed and chipped. The wood was lighter in places where the stain had been rubbed off. The walls had small cracks, and there was dust that coated some of the door frames. How old is this place? He questioned himself mentally. And for that matter, why are some doors closed? Why is there no one else here? He looked around the room and something caught his eyes. It was the closet. It looked like it had once been detailed and intricate. But it was battered, chipped in some areas. What happened here? Vandere walked into the room, a small portion of a dark-colored piece of leaf in one hand and a cup of water in the other. She crushed the plant and sprinkled it into the water. She smiled and held it out to him. Sandu hesitated. Darling, I really, really need you to drink this. I mean, come on. Drink it, she said, her tone and volume exponentially growing. He reached out a tentative hand and grabbed the drink. Little pieces of the plant that had floated in it had subsequently dissolved. He sniffed lightly and widened his eyes. Nothing. It had no smell whatsoever. Part of being a servant to high officials to the Imperium meant that he was sometimes tasked with eating or drinking a portion of a meal. If he keeled over, then they knew the food had been poisoned. Luckily, that had only happened once. He raised the lip of the cup to his mouth and downed it. He was expecting to taste something bitter or sweet in the drink, but it tasted just like water. It tasted normal. Thank you, my love. Now you'll be awake for a few minutes, but then you'll start to feel drowsy and then bam! You're peacefully asleep. It should kick in fairly soon, but just in case, I need you to stay in this room for me, okay? I'll be back. Odds are you'll still be asleep when I get home, but don't worry, I'll protect and watch over you while you sleep. Goodbye, my darling. She pulled a key out and walked outside the doorway. She closed it, and Sandu could hear the key jostle in the lock until it finally locked. Her footsteps succeeded down the hallway, gradually becoming more and more muffled until he could no longer hear them anymore. He shot up, eyes tracing the room for any means of escape. The room didn't even have a window. What kind of bedroom is this, he thought. He frantically inspected the room. Could I pull up some of